Every echo begins in silence. Every roar was once a whisper. Before the world remembered their names, before the statues, the books, and the speeches, there was a single moment of stillness, a moment no one talks about, when the world was quiet, and only their heartbeat answered back. Greatness does not arrive with noise. It is not born under spotlights or crowned with applause. It begins in obscurity, in the long nights when doubt is louder than faith, in the mornings when rising feels impossible, in the countless moments when giving up would have been easier. The painter stood before an empty canvas that stared back like a question. The writer bled on paper only to burn the words that no one would ever read. The dreamer built and rebuilt their vision in the shadows, long before the light ever found them. Before the applause, there was agony. Before the fame, there was faith. Before the light, there was darkness. History does not remember how easy it was, because it never was. It remembers the ones who refused to break, the ones who stood in silence and said, "If no one believes in me, I still will." Because greatness is not granted, it is earned. Earned in private battles, unseen tears, and relentless persistence. Every name that echoes through time, from the scientist who changed the course of humanity, to the leader who moved hearts and nations, to the artist who turned pain into beauty, they all began the same way, with nothing but a whisper, and the will to keep whispering until the world listened. The sound of greatness is not found in the crowd's cheer. It's born in the quiet promise you make to yourself. I'm not done yet. That promise, that whisper, becomes the first vibration of your echo. And once you decide to keep going, to rise again when no one's watching, the silence begins to shift. The walls begin to answer back. The world begins to turn toward you. Because the echo of greatness does not start when the world hears you. It begins the moment you decide to be heard. Every echo begins in silence, but it never stays there if you refuse to. Every generation believes its struggles are new, but the silence has always been the same. It's the same silence that haunted a young scientist, scribbling ideas no one believed. The same silence that followed an artist, painting in a small room where rent came before recognition. The same silence that wraps around dreamers today, who post, create, build, and fail in a world that rarely claps. Greatness has always lived here, in the space between effort and acknowledgement. Long before the world saw them as legends, they were just people. People with doubts, debts, and days when hope felt small. Thomas Edison, after thousands of failed experiments, was once told to stop wasting his time on light. But he didn't see failure, he saw feedback. Each mistake was an echo, a quiet reminder that persistence was building something bigger than proof. Leonardo da Vinci spent years painting, dissecting, sketching. His brilliance misunderstood, his notebooks ignored. But still he wrote, still he created. Because he wasn't chasing applause, he was chasing truth. And centuries later, a boy with a basketball would dribble alone in an empty gym, his breath loud, his dream louder. Michael Jordan missed over 9,000 shots, lost hundreds of games, and yet every failure became a rehearsal for greatness. Different centuries, different dreams, same silence. It is the same silence that follows the young woman coding in her bedroom, the singer whose song gets 10 views, the entrepreneur whose idea no one understands. The echo of greatness always begins the same way, with a single person, alone with their craft, refusing to stop. Because every small act of persistence sends a vibration, a wave that moves unseen through time. You may not hear it now, but every effort, every failure, every repetition builds your sound. The setup of greatness is not glamorous. It's quiet. It's invisible. It's those long, lonely hours when no one's watching. It's the unseen struggle between what is and what could be. Yet, that's the birthplace of every legend. The studio with no audience. The notebook with no reader. The field with no crowd. This is where greatness is born. Not in applause, but in the discipline to keep showing up when the world stays silent. And somewhere in that silence, your first echo forms. Not loud yet, but growing. Waiting for the moment it reaches back, and the world finally turns to listen. The conflict of echo of greatness. Every dream begins with hope, but every echo meets resistance, because the moment you decide to rise, the world begins to push back. The silence becomes heavier, the path becomes harder, and the voice within you begins to question if it was ever meant to be. For every soul that ever chased greatness, there came a point where persistence met pain. When Thomas Edison's lab burned to the ground, years of work were gone in hours. He stood watching the flames that devoured his life's labor, and said quietly, "Thank God all our mistakes were burned up. Now we can start again." He could have wept, he could have quit, but he chose to begin again. Because true greatness is not found in success, it's revealed in survival. When Beethoven began to lose his hearing, the one sense his genius depended on started to vanish. Imagine it, the composer of symphonies, slowly sinking into silence. He wrote letters filled with despair, but he never stopped composing, because even when the world went quiet, the music inside him refused to die. And when Nelson Mandela was locked behind prison walls, the movement he dreamed of seemed crushed by chains. For 27 years the world forgot him, but he did not forget his vision. He became an echo in isolation, and that echo grew louder than the prison that tried to contain it. The same conflict lives today. It's the creator whose work goes unseen, the athlete who trains with no scouts watching, the student whose effort outpaces recognition, the parent who sacrifices quietly, believing that one day the pain will mean something. You begin to question yourself. You start wondering if the silence is a sign to stop, or a test to see how deeply you believe. That's the war within every great story, because the world rarely celebrates the middle of your journey. It claps at the finish line, but it's the long stretch of loneliness that defines who you are. There will be moments when your faith shakes, when your mind screams, "This isn't working," when you compare your chapter 1 to someone else's victory lap, when the doubt becomes deafening. But that's when the echo is tested, to see if it will die in silence, or grow strong enough to break through it. The conflict of greatness is not against others. It's against your own surrender. It's waking up after failure and saying, "I'll try again." It's fighting through exhaustion when no one sees the effort. It's believing when belief feels foolish. Because greatness does not come from those who had it easy. It comes from those who refused to quit when it wasn't. Every mountain looks impossible until someone climbs it. Every dream looks foolish until it's finished. And every echo sounds weak until it begins to bounce back stronger than before. This is the heart of the conflict, the moment when silence turns to struggle, and struggle shapes your sound. It's where the faint whisper becomes a voice, and that voice, if you keep feeding it, will one day shake the walls of the world. The turning point of echo of greatness. There always comes a moment, quiet at first, when the silence begins to shift. Not because the world suddenly changes, but because you do. After years of being overlooked, after nights of doubt and endless failure, something inside starts to awaken. A voice you once whispered begins to grow stronger. This is the turning point. The moment you stop asking, "When will the world see me?" and start saying, "Even if it never does, I will still create." That's the spark that changes everything. Because the truth is, greatness was never about recognition. It was about transformation. And transformation doesn't happen in comfort. It happens when everything breaks and you decide to rebuild anyway. When Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job, they told her she wasn't fit for TV, but that rejection became her redirection. She didn't stop speaking, she learned to speak truer. Her voice wasn't meant to fit in, it was meant to resonate. When J.K. Rowling's manuscript was rejected by 12 publishers, she had every reason to walk away. A single mother surviving off welfare, handing out her dream to people who didn't believe in it. But she sent it one more time, just once more. And that final submission changed the literary world forever. Because sometimes greatness isn't about finding the door, it's about knocking until it opens. And then there was Abraham Lincoln. Defeat after defeat, failure after failure. He lost elections, businesses, and hope over and over again. But each failure refined his character, forged his endurance, and turned him into the kind of man who could carry the weight of a nation. You see, the turning point is not one moment in time. It's a decision repeated 1,000 times. The decision to keep showing up. To write when no one reads, to practice when no one's watching, to keep going when everything says stop. And one day, without warning, something happens. A door opens, a message arrives, a result shifts. It may be small, almost invisible, but you feel it. It's not luck, it's not fate. It's the echo you've been building, finally finding its way back to you. Because persistence has a sound. You can't always hear it, but it never disappears. Every action, every failure, every moment of resistance, they all combine, reverberating through time. Until one day they return as opportunity. The world finally begins to listen. The silence that once mocked you starts to hum with recognition. But something has changed. You no longer crave their applause. Because now you understand. You didn't need it to begin with. You've become the echo. Your persistence has become your identity. The struggle didn't weaken you, it tuned you. Like an instrument shaped by pressure, you found your true sound. And now your voice, your work, your life begins to carry. That's the moment every great soul discovers. The echo of greatness isn't about being heard. It's about becoming the kind of person who can't be silenced. From that moment on, the dreamer becomes unstoppable because they no longer chase success. They embody it. They no longer wait for the world to echo back. They create their own reverberation. This is the turning point, when failure becomes fuel, pain becomes purpose, and silence finally becomes sound. The rise of echo of greatness. Every great story has a moment when everything changes, not suddenly, but through the slow awakening of what was always meant to be. The same hands that once trembled from failure begin to build with confidence. The same eyes that once saw only darkness start to notice the first signs of dawn. Because when persistence takes root, it begins to grow quietly, until one day it blooms loud enough for the world to see. This is the rise. The moment when all the years of unseen effort start to show their reflection in reality. The painter's work, once ignored, now captures hearts. The writer's words, once rejected, now fill shelves. The athlete's lonely mornings finally meet the sound of a cheering crowd. But this is not victory. This is validation. The universe echoing back the sound of their consistency. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple after being fired from his own company, he wasn't coming back for revenge. He came back refined. The same man who once chased perfection now understood patience, and from that balance he built not just a product, but a legacy. When Serena Williams rose again after injuries and doubt, the world called her a comeback. But it wasn't a comeback, it was a continuation. Because greatness never stops. It just waits for its moment to reappear. The rise doesn't mean the end of struggle. It means you've learned to move through it differently. What once broke you now builds you. What once scared you now fuels you. You stop running from failure and start using it as your foundation. Every no becomes a stepping stone. Every mistake becomes a lesson. Every delay becomes direction. And somewhere in that climb, you begin to see how your echo spreads. You start to notice people watching, people who see in you the reflection of their own fight. They hear their own fears in your story. They feel their own potential in your rise. Because true greatness isn't about reaching the top. It's about becoming the voice that helps others believe they can climb too. The rise is contagious. It doesn't shout, it radiates. Every step you take echoes into someone else's courage. Every time you refuse to give up, you become the proof someone else needed. And that's how the world changes. Not through one giant act of success, but through millions of small echoes, rising together. Think of it. A young man watches Muhammad Ali and learns that conviction can outfight circumstance. A student reads about Marie Curie and realizes discovery is born from dedication. A child sees a mother working tirelessly and understands that love itself is a legacy. The rise of one creates the rise of many. And when you finally stand on that mountain you once thought impossible, you'll realize something beautiful. It was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving yourself right. Because greatness isn't about the noise that follows you. It's about the echo you leave behind. And that echo begins to travel. Through generations, through hearts, through time. You became the echo that once inspired you. And now, others will rise because you did. This is the rise, where persistence becomes power, and your sound becomes unstoppable. The resonance, the echo of greatness. When all is said and done, when the lights fade, when the applause quiets and the world moves on, what remains is the echo. The echo of the choices you made when no one was watching. The echo of the faith you held when nothing seemed to work. The echo of the fight you refused to abandon. Because greatness, true greatness, is not a single moment. It's a ripple that travels through time. The inventions, the art, the speeches, the sacrifices, they all fade eventually. But the impact, the resonance, lives on in the hearts it touched, the minds it awakened, the courage it sparked in others to rise again. Martin Luther King Jr. is gone, but his dream still speaks in the voices of generations. Rosa Parks' single act of defiance still resonates in the footsteps of every person who refuses to sit down. Einstein's curiosity still fuels every discovery, every child who looks at the stars and wonders, what if? And it isn't just history's giants who leave echoes. It's the quiet ones too. The teacher who believes in a forgotten student, the parent who sacrifices silently, the friend who chooses kindness over convenience. Their echoes ripple quietly, but deeply. Because resonance isn't about volume, it's about impact. You may never see the full reach of your persistence. You may never know who you inspired, whose heart you steadied, whose dream you kept alive just by not giving up. But make no mistake, every act of endurance, every moment you rise when it would be easier to fall, sends out a vibration that never dies. It travels through time, through people, through generations. It becomes the unseen connection between those who refuse to quit before you and those who will refuse to quit after you. That is resonance. That is legacy. The echo of greatness doesn't belong to monuments or history books. It lives in movement. It moves through the laughter of those who dream, through the courage of those who dare, through the perseverance of those who continue the work you began. And someday, someone will rise because you did. They won't know your name. They won't know your struggle. But your echo will be in them, guiding them, strengthening them, reminding them that greatness isn't inherited, it's ignited. This is the true reward of persistence. To live a life that outlasts you. To build something that keeps moving long after you stop. To be part of the eternal chain of souls who refuse to stay silent, refuse to give up, refuse to stay down. Because in the end, every life, no matter how small it seems, creates a sound. And if you live with courage, if you rise again and again, your sound will echo beyond your lifetime. It will move through others. It will call them to rise. And your story will become part of the sound of history itself. So when the world grows quiet, when doubt returns, and you feel alone in your struggle, remember this: you are not forgotten. You are not silent. You are an echo in motion, the continuation of every soul who ever refused to quit. And someday someone will find their strength, because they heard the faint sound of yours. Your echo begins the moment you refuse to stay down.